Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us. Today, we're honored to have Christy Bowe. Christy Bowe is a photojournalist and author. She is currently a member of the White House Press Corps, House and Senate Press Photographers Gallery, White House Correspondents Association, and White House News Photographers Association. She is the author of History in the Making, a focus on 5 U.S. presidents. Her book discusses the human side of the 5 U.S. presidents that she's covered for 30 years as a press corps photographer at the White House. She's covered Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, and Clinton. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Christy, how are you doing today?
Oh, fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, look, we are political junkies here, and anytime we find an insider who can tell us a little tidbits about how things work out there and how your photography worked and what kind of things you inferred from the pictures that you've taken, and who knows, even maybe things you've overheard. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, who you are.
Well, I am a third-generation Washingtonian and been a member of the White House Press Corps for almost 35 years. So, as you mentioned earlier, I've covered five U.S. presidents, and there's been lots of rocking and rolling in between, that period of time. So it's been a fascinating journey. I feel very blessed to have had this as a career.
Now, let me ask you this, because it always intrigues me how you see these photographs come about, right? So how does it work? You said you've been a photographer for 5 presidents. Where are you? When do you go around the pool? Are you always around the press pool? Are you kind of just hanging around the White House and on the plane? What exactly happens?
Well, we get the schedules for the president, and then sometimes they're late in the day, in the evening, which has been recently, that's kind of the case. And sometimes we get the week ahead. That used to be a regular thing. Now that's just starting to come back. So everybody's very grateful for that, because that helps you in planning your day. So that will, kind of determine what it is that I do that day, whether it be at the something on Capitol Hill, a hearing there, or the White House, whether the president is doing something. And then typically if an event is, let's say he has something by at 11 a.m., just for making something up here, that if he has something at 11, then we're going to need to get down there. I'm going to need to get down there and bring my gear and stuff on my little ladder. And get in position for waiting. So for what's called a preset is those of us that come early, and sometimes that can be an hour or 2 hours early. And then the White House press office will escort us to the venue, whether it be the Rose Garden or the East Room or wherever it is. And then the people who are there for preset, you kind of go in, and behind the velvet ropes, we establish our position by leaving like a ladder or something to mark our spot. And then we go back down to the briefing room and hang out until it's time for what's called the final escort. And then the final escort is anybody who was not there earlier. So they're getting kind of leftover positions. And sometimes that can get a little frisky depending on what the event is and how high profile of an event it is. And then at the final escort, then we get in place, get into your position, and then all the reporters come in, and the TVs are already in there. They preset always. And then, the president sometimes is late, often. All the presidents that I have covered, all 5 of them, are punctually challenged, shall we say, except for President Bush. He was on time, sometimes early. You could set your watch. He was never late. So that's something. And then they come in and do the event, and then we cannot leave until the president leaves the room, of course. And then we go back down, and then we transmit our pictures to our agencies or whoever we're doing work for.
Now, when you do first of all, when you do all of this, is it separated by whether you are doing video or doing stills? Do you have the ability to do both, or are you restricted?
Uh, some people, there's been a crossover with that lately. I personally just do stills.
Right.
On Capitol Hill, that's a big issue because Capitol Hill, they don't want people doing video unless you are
right.
A network of some kind, or you shouldn't be sitting with the still photographers on Capitol Hill because you're up closer than the people who are further back to be to be doing video.
Of course, it's hard to police that given the type of cameras you have today that can
exactly.
go into video.
And I know my cameras do offer that capability. I use the Nikon Z9 and Z8.
Mm-hmm.
And I have yet to dabble in that, although I've been told, why not? Because that's the thing.
That would be a lot of great videos for social media, especially given how up close you are. And actually, it's our president, it's our vice president, it's our people. It belongs to the people. The reason I'm asking you questions like this is, I think our audience kind of want to know when they see stuff on TV, what's actually happening in the background. So
yes, and people often don't understand that, like what I was just saying to you, that 11 o'clock event, that's fictional 11 o'clock event, that, we're talking by the time you get up there, get downtown, load up all your stuff, wait for the president to leave, then transmit all your stuff, and the thing is over. You're talking, and maybe you have one picture come out of that. That's
right.
what kind of burns us up a little bit, is for people to go, oh yeah, just go down there, and it's just like a quick shot. It is no quick shot.
Never,
it's like borderline 7 hours, 8 hours. Then there's the editing portion of it, depending on who you're shooting for, and it's a lot involved for just one picture that the public may see.
Now, what about when he's out of town or going on the plane? Which photographers and journalists are able to make the plane ride with him to get into the gaggle, etc.?
Well, that would be people that are in the predetermined pool. The White House determines who the pool is going to be. And it used to be the White House Correspondents Association kind of had a big role in that, as you, I'm sure, have heard. Mm-hmm. And then the whole big dust up with the AP and that whole thing. So the seats are designated on Air Force One. And I'm hoping to be able to do that. Actually, I have yet to fly on Air Force One, but I hope to be able to do that.
So right now you're doing the still pictures at the White House or in Washington, or maybe if you go to California, would you ever fly to California to take a few shots?
No. See, there you're saying that. Take a few shots. Remember, what is that? That means big commitment of time.
By the way, I by no means am I discounting. I do video. I do all of this, and our process here is going to take quite a bit before the audience actually sees a finished copy of it. So I understand that what you do is very hard and important,
and time consuming, and very complex. Yes. Sorry, that's a trigger thing for me.
It's understood, because right here when we're doing media, people think you just get in front of a camera. Many people, or that you write an article. All our articles are well researched. We've really researched what you're doing, and we want to bring that to the audience as well. Now, you've just written a book, and your book, tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book.
Well, I think everything has become politics have become so polarized, and everybody is it's a trigger thing to have talk about politics, because you don't know who you're going to set off or whose side people are on. It's very divisive, as you well know. And so I wanted to, for this book, I had written one other book.
And let's get the name of the book. I should have said the name of the book. Oh,
yes. My book is History in the Making. And it's on 5 U.S. presidents. And I sent a picture.
I want to do the whole name because it's so important. History in the Making, a focus on 5 U.S. presidents. She tries to discuss the humanity of these presidents that she's covered. Continue, my friend.
Yes. Okay. Because they are very different human beings with very different viewpoints, and most of them get along. I have really been impressed with the camaraderie of most of the former presidents. That I have not photographed President Trump with any of the others, but I've photographed some of the others together. I believe they sent you a few of those pictures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of like President Obama, Bush, and Clinton when they came together. And it's kind of rare to have three of them together or more. So, but I really get a kick out of watching them and the familiarity that they have with each other, the way they joke, and they're so relaxed because it's like a club that they belong to, that nobody else knows what it's like to be the leader of the free world. So they have a special bond between them. And I thought it was wonderful and was very happy to see that President Biden left a beautiful note for President Trump in the Oval Office in the Resolute desk, which is customary to do, and that President Trump appreciated that and was very positive about that. So I thought I was very pleased about that. But that is one of the things that they do that I'm sure, I don't know if your audience has heard this, but when one president leaves office and another one comes in, the sitting president will leave the incoming president a handwritten note on White House stationery in the desk that wishes them well, basically, and give them any advice. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I talk in my book about little behind the scenes things like that. And then also about, although that they politically, obviously, and in other ways are very different people, the one thing that every one of them has had in common is that they are close with their families. Appreciate their families, and their families mean a lot to them.
Now, what in all these?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question of why did I write this book? Because I wanted to show the human side and the personal side of these human beings that are in the Oval Office. Because I think we kind of lose sight when there was so much fighting going on during the different elections that we forget that, hey, these are human beings.
So I imagine after you put your stairs to hold your position where you're going to take your pictures, your eyes are always roaming, your ears are always open to see what's going on in your surroundings. During any particular crisis for any particular president, which one did you find the most jarring?
Jarring of any of the
of any of the five presidents? I know that there are times when there is some event that has occurred that has national and probably international implications that you were there to photograph and you saw all the machinations behind it. What event would that have been in your opinion?
Well, I would have to say two different ones come to mind. September 11th.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly. I was not there at the Pentagon, but I was there for the aftermath of that. And as all the world leaders came which was quite touching, that not all of them, but a significant amount of world leaders came to the Oval Office to express their condolences about the horrible thing that happened to the United States. And that was really quite special and touching. And then just to see how everybody was gathering together to kind of unite, which I think the whole nation, not just the White House, everybody was very united after that and kind of coming together to try to, help each other as much as we could. So that was one incident. And the other incident was on January 6th. I was at the Capitol that day. So that was a very boots on the ground kind of situation for me.
So you're actually on the grounds of the Capitol when that occurred?
Yes.
And what was your vantage point?
I was on the east side of the Capitol.
Okay. And so
I was outside. I was not inside the Capitol. I was outside.
And did you get a whole lot of stills out of that, or?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Well,
those are in both this book, History in the Making. There's a few pictures of that in there. And I tell the story of that a little bit. And then also that's in my other book, Eyes That Speak, one woman's photographer's journey with history makers.
What story of January 6th most impacted you? Something, let's say that you saw, that you pictured, and even maybe had an interaction with.
Well, I was kind of surprised that the way things kind of picked up, because the folks that were there at first were very friendly and nice, and there was no trouble whatsoever. It was kind of later in the day where things picked up, and some of the people who were like, some of the ones I spoke with were from the Midwest, older people, and they kind of got caught up in everything. So I think, not everybody there was violent. That's for sure. But the ones that were, as things escalated, photographers had their well, one of them in particular had their camera smashed. Another TV camera was lit on fire. There was a lot of things that were not really reported, that not to mention the violence with the police officers there. And I covered that too with the January 6 hearings, and it was like 140 some of them were injured, seriously injured. And
you're talking about police officers and journalists, yeah.
Yes, but mainly police officers that were really, really injured badly, and that kind of went away. So that was kind of.
So wait, let me see about you. Just kind of opened my eyes here. Are you telling me that the injuries to police officers, for all practical purposes, went underreported?
I think it was underreported. Yes, and the January 6th committee brought that to view more, but they were using body cam footage of the actual thing. So it's not like somebody was exaggerating. They had the actual body cam footage of these people that were being injured and beaten. So that it was a lot more than a big deal. I know that for a while there, it was disturbing to see people saying, some of the same people that were hiding inside the Capitol, Congress people that were hiding and being escorted out and were like terrified, were like, well, it really wasn't that big a deal. It was a big deal. And that should not be forgotten. So
were you scared while you were out there?
I was trying to focus on what I was doing. I was not fearful for my life, but there was an encounter with myself and one of the groups there where they were yelling at me. And I was very aware of the fact that typically when I go onto the Capitol grounds, I don't even think for my safety or anything else, because I know there's so much security around and everything else that you don't worry about watching your back. And that was definitely not the case that day. So that was kind of jarring to know that you weren't, the situation had shifted so much that it was like every man for themselves.
Did you pretty much clarify that in your first book about how likely the police officer injury and attacks were probably greater than what was played on mainstream media?
That was not as much the case, because I had not, at that point, when my first book came out, I had not covered the January 6 hearings yet.
Okay, got it.
So that, so I give lectures now to different organizations to talk about that. I have pictures set to music that show images that are in my book and of the 5 different presidents. And then also I have another entire video about January 6th.
Well, so I tell you what, because we're getting close on time, let's do this. You took care of 5, you photographed 5 presidents. Yes. In order, the first would be Clinton, the oldest yes. one, Clinton. Tell me something about photographing Clinton, then tell me something about photographing Bush, then Obama, then Trump, then Biden.
Okay. President Clinton was a very wonderful person to photograph, very charismatic, just like people say. When he would speak to you, you'd be the only person in the room type of thing, even if there was a crowd in there. He had that gift that some people have. A lot of people don't. So during the turbulence with the Monica Lewinsky incident, things were a little more tense with us. We had wonderful access with the Clintons, fabulous access. He had regular planned press conferences that everybody knew way in advance. We had the week ahead schedule. You could pretty much, with the exception of once in a while with schedule changes, you pretty much could plan your week ahead, a week in advance, which was fabulous. So, and they even had for us a picnic where we came out onto the South Lawn, and there was Ferris wheels and all kinds of stuff, with a big cookout that was like a big surprise for the press. And then they walked around with their Secret Service detail, of course, but they walked around freely among us, and it was just really gracious, wonderful way to know that we're appreciated. So they had a great and Christmas parties we would go to with them, and it was just very inclusive. Even when the Monica Lewinsky incident happened, things got a little strained, but they still but the Clintons, both of them, still had respect for the media, that we were doing our job, they were doing theirs, and everybody stayed in their lane and kept moving forward. That was very special that they were able to do that. And then Hillary, I've covered over the years as well. She too has been fabulous to work with. Very, very gracious and accommodating. Bush, I really got a kick out of President Bush 43. He, the one that was always on time, he had a wonderful personality. So if I had to say attribute to each of the presidents, or characteristic, of each of the presidents, I'd say Clinton was very charismatic, would be the word for him. Bush, the word I would use for him is genuine. What you saw is what you got. And I would, when you're in the Oval Office, we have a very short period of time to take pictures, or we did. President Trump has changed that a bit, which is nice. And Trump is now much better accessible than he used to be in the first term. But anyway, Bush you're not allowed to speak with the president if you're a photographer in the Oval Office unless he speaks with you first. And like I said, we would have like 15 seconds, 10 seconds to make a picture going in there. So you had to know what your lighting was. You had to know what you wanted, and then have time to look around, see who else was in there, and get your shot. So I learned the value of how much a couple of seconds is. I can really. And
preparation.
Yes, because you got to know what your settings need to be. So anyway,
Obama,
and Bush and I would kid around quite a bit. And that was really wonderful to be able to have a president kid around with you. That was great. We'd have little one-liners. So that was really special. And then Obama, I would have to say, very much of a wonderful comedic sense of timing he would have. He could have his own TV show. He was very good with that. And he's obviously a good speaker and a wonderful family man. I appreciated how his family, and I have pictures in the book of him with Sasha and Malia walking off of Marine One, holding hands and having genuine conversations. They kind of acquired the skill of not paying attention to there being photographers around. I guess because they had Secret Service all the time. They just got used to there being other people around. And so, we photographers in the press corps have historically been very respectful about the children of the presidents and not being too invasive and anything like that. But that is what comes to mind with Obama. And then President Biden, I would have to say what comes to mind with him is a lifelong public servant. Certainly, he spent his whole life, even with personal tragedies happening to him, he continued to serve the nation. And
was he very accessible?
No.
Okay.
No, not to me. I was not in the Oval Office one time during his entire 4 years.
Wow.
So that's awful. Yeah. But yeah, so he was very much not accessible to me and people. Just a few photographers had good access with him, and then there was like no real press conferences to speak of either.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think I really respected his commitment to his family and his closeness with them. Then I am, and then with President Trump, certainly what comes to mind for him is spontaneous, is the word that comes with him, because he is really interesting that way, that he does things with the press. Sometimes I get his schedule, I guess, usually 11 o'clock at night, and then for the next day, and then he changes things up quite a bit, so that he may be having one thing and then change it and opening it up and letting press come in to cover him.
And you did him in his first 4 years,
yes,
and you're doing him now.
Yes, and I take back what I said about the access not being as good for him in his first term, because he kind of really, I got to say, I was impressed in the way that he turned things around in his first term, for not having press conferences. Obama had regular ones, Clinton had regular ones, Bush had regular ones, but Trump did not have press conferences. So, and that's kind of gone away, actually, a regular traditional press conference that's planned, where people can get their questions and plan ahead. That doesn't exist anymore. So with him, that was the beginning of that turn of events. And then what he did is, rather than, because I was in the room with him when he and Jim Acosta kind of got into it
right
that time, and it really was not a good situation. So all the way around. So what he ended up doing instead was changing things. So instead of being trapped in a room full of journalists for an hour, answering questions and being held accountable with your feet to the fire, he changed things where he would come out, and on his way to Marine One, coming out of the Oval Office, he would stop and take questions. So what used to be like, I don't know, 15, 20 people would be there for his arrivals or departures from the helicopter Marine One on the South Lawn, that got to be a big event where there'd be like 100 people or more.
Right.
And that people would be all lined up, and he would take questions. Now, we were standing, so sometimes he'd come out of the diplomatic room there by the Truman balcony or from the Oval Office. But as he would come out, everybody would hustle to get, in position. And then there's a hierarchy of who gets where, because cameras have to be in, the TVs and everything else. So everybody has to kind of hustle and be there. And then he could come over and actually talk with people everybody would get questions, and everybody was delighted. He could talk to you for a half hour.
Right.
Now, the part is that Marine One is not too far away with the engine.
And it's loud. Yeah.
There's that, and the exhaust of that. But so that we're breathing all that. But then if he didn't, this is my personal opinion, that if there's a question that he didn't want to answer, or that he might not know the answer to, he's certainly not expected to know everything, and none of them are. But then he could say, "Oh, can't hear you," or "Gotta go." So he would determine how long he was there.
If things are going great for him, it's great. If not, bye-bye. Yeah. Well, look, let me just tell you, Christy, I find it intriguing being able to go out there and do all these things, and that you've written a book that sort of bring your experience into so that people can kind of have a feeling of what happens behind the scene when they see this stuff in the Washington Post or they see it on TV, etc. The amount of work that you guys have going behind there. So why don't you, in closing, give us the name of your book, where you can get your book as well, and give us a one-line closer or something.
Sure. Okay. All right. So my book is called "History in the Making: A Focus on 5 U.S. Presidents," and it's available on Amazon, at Barnes and Nobles. If you're local in the Washington area, it's at Politics and Prose also. And I would like to say in closing that everybody needs to just keep in mind that we're all in this together, and that not to lose sight of the fact that our presidents are also our, we got to think of them more as our next door neighbor, and that they're human too, and that they can make mistakes or not, but they need to be, there needs to be respect on both ends. The media needs to be respected, and so does the presidency.
Christy Bowe, a photojournalist and author at the White House. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you so much for having me.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.